We agreed our last night together would be our happiest ever, and we'd forget tomorrow was going to come at all. It worked for a while. We had a good time seeing Oscar off, then ran up to the attic to look through our photos, to find one for Lonnie to take with her. And looking at them, I realized they were all in the past, and there wouldn't be any more. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I cried, and she held me. She said she knew it was hard, but life would move on. I said I didn't want my life to keep moving without her. That's when she cried too. I was so exhausted. I must have fallen asleep like that, in her arms. In the morning, I woke up, and I was finally alone.
You want to talk about this fucking jazz mug?
Nobody wants to talk about the jazz mug.
Well,
it's
except
the
for
worst.
Carla.
I hate it. It's the worst.
that was such a common theme when we were like approving assets or making stuff visually for Gone Home. Is just like, oh my god, that's hideous. I fucking hate it. We're putting it in the game.
Yeah,
because like
so
just
much
like
of that.
awful '90s furniture and like
we see it in a secondhand store or like
or you
just
see
on
it
the
in the
internet.
Sears catalog
Like,
we
yeah,
bought,
it's
and it's just
true.
like there's so
We just
many
feel like,
fucking ruffles on it. I want to puke. Like the wicker furniture in Mom and Dad's room.
Right.
It's like that's fucking hideous.
We need it.
We didn't really give Kate very specific direction for this. She gave us some reference for us to approve and everything, but when we put it into the game, again, not a request from us at all. Looking at the struts and the shape of the windows and how it's this sort of deco metal structure with water outside of it, I was just like, welcome to Rapture.
Oh, I know, it's so true.
It almost feels
really
like an intentional reference, if only it were intentional.
Lonnie had her going away show with her band tonight. She's so incredible on stage. When she was singing, I could practically forget everything. That we only had 48 hours left. That I don't know what comes next. That I can't live without her. Then she dedicated the last song to me. And I couldn't take it. I was out on the curb in the alley, sobbing till my ribs hurt. I would follow her anywhere, Katie. But I can't. Where she's going. After a long time, she found me. She said she was sorry. She said, I wish things could be different. I just wanted to make you happy. I said, I don't think you can anymore.
So that was probably the hardest one we had to record. It was part of the second batch of recording we did. And so I had the script a few days before we did the recording to kind of read through it all and get a feel for where the story was going. And then we'd met for lunch to go over everything and see if I had any questions before we went into the studio. And I just right away admitted, like, yep, some part of this script here, like, I'll be honest, one of these totally had me crying, like, straight up, totally couldn't help it. Figuring, like, yeah, I had my cry out, it was good, I'll be fine, get to the recording, it'll be great, get it out of your system. And as soon as, like, I read the first word, I was like, no, oh God, I'm gonna start crying again, it's gonna be great. I'm like, hey, I'm a professional voice actress in the studio, I'm going to totally bawl all over your lines, and it's going to sound ridiculous and terrible, and we're going to have to do the take again, and it's going to sound even worse, because now I'm crying. So, it actually ended up being one take. Really, it's cathartic in a way for me, I think, because it's really, how do I put it? It's really me talking to, like, specific people. I knew it was going to happen again. I knew it. It's the stupid writing being so on point. Which is definite praise for the character build-up at this point, because I just become so connected with her, and making those parallels all the way along. And then you get to this point where it's like, I know exactly how you feel. Like, I know exactly what you're going through. I mean, it was completely authentic. I mean, I've enjoyed people commenting on the connection they've had to the emotion that's in the character. And this is always the diary I think of, because it's the one that it most got me.
Daniel finally came over to get his game. I'd been dreading it. But he brought this story with him that I wrote when we were little. I started reading it, and then there I was, crying at the kitchen table. He asked what was wrong, and I was thinking about how we used to be friends, how much I'd taken for granted. But instead, I told him about school, and Dad, and Lonnie. And then how sorry I was that I wasn't his friend anymore. He gave me a hug and said it was going to be okay. And for some reason, I almost believed him.
For a long time, the kitchen was not going to be mid-renovation the way that it is. And it's one of those things that I think that necessity, a production constraint, actually made this part of the house better than it would have been if we could have just done whatever we wanted. Because for a long time we were like, okay, it's just going to be a kitchen, and so we're going to need a bunch of food, which we ended up making, and we're going to need a bunch of appliances, and we're going to need a bunch of, utensils and a block with kitchen knives in and all the kind of stuff that would be in a kitchen. And at some point we just realized we didn't have the bandwidth to, like, of all the rooms in a house, the kitchen, I think, has the most just one-off unique thingies in it, because there's all these kitchen appliances and stuff that appear nowhere else in a house. And so at some point we just realized it wasn't going to make sense for us to try to portray that in a literal way. And so I just had the idea, what if I just tore the place apart, and the cabinets were sitting on the ground and the counters were laid up against the wall, and it's an old house, and maybe before the family moved in the kitchen hadn't been updated since the 50s, and so they decided to redo the kitchen, and they're in the middle of that when you get here. I think that that's hopefully more visually interesting than playing it straight would have been, and B, it allowed us to make this feel like a believable space in a way that we just wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
So I'm Sarah Argidale. This is my salad dressing, named for my experience with being in Russia and that being what everyone knows me for. I studied Russian in college, and I lived there for about a year teaching English when I finished school, and it was a cool thing that happened in my life. So I am a reader of the Idle Thumbs podcast, and I guess that's how I met everyone at the Fulbright company and kind of inserted myself into their lives. The Gone Home team, the Fulbright team, was nice enough to put a little token in the game for me, and it's pretty cool.
When you put out any sort of content about your game online, whether it's screenshots or whether it's gameplay or anything along those lines, you're sort of at the mercy of the internet, and you sort of want to see what people are going to respond to, whether it's positive or negative. Hopefully it's positive. But we put out the screenshot a while back of the TV room, among other screenshots, and there's lots of wonderful comments, and I was really happy about that. But one of the comments that I saw a couple of times was people talking about how greasy this pizza box was. Something I hadn't noticed, so I went back and I checked it. It's a very greasy pizza box. Maybe Sam's into deep dish pizza, who knows. But I'm glad we didn't change it. I'm glad we kept it just as gross as it always was. I like it.
definitely the second half was where a lot more of the emotional weight in the character came out, and that was a lot to handle, but a lot of fun to do too, because I've really not gotten to do a character that actually was so, I guess, emotionally real and so human. You know, it's sort of, you're not doing some commercial selling you thing, or not doing some sort of sci-fi fantasy world sort of story. It was very realistic and very relatable, and you sort of realize that the character's someone that you could know or that you could have been, you know, when you were younger, which I really liked. It was very exciting. The whole experience has been really good.
I asked Lonnie what she had to do to get ready to ship out for basic training. She said, not a lot, really. You're not allowed to bring anything with you. You have no possessions, no contact with the outside world while you're in basic. You just train hard every day, and then you deploy from there. So, they'll just send her away. To who knows where. The other side of the country? The other side of the world? My mind, can't process it. She's really going to be gone. Just gone.
Oh, you found an Easter egg!
Who found it?
You found it! This is the best! You looked up! No one in a first-person game looks up!
Because there's no rewards to looking up.
Because it's hard to look up.
Also, you weren't allowed to look up in,
Wolfenstein? And Doom, I guess. It shot higher if there was an enemy higher.
Oh, yeah.
If you go get something recyclable from the recycle bin, I made it so that when you throw it way further than a normal thing, and you can knock the basketball out of the rafters and then carry it to Sam's room, and then when you make a basket, either by just throwing it through or by dunking,
you get a present.
You get a present, which is pictures of our cats showing up on the television.
And cats that we know.
Cats and friends of cats.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
And we also we did a final wrap up, like a pickup voice recording session with Sarah Grayson, and we just went in there to re-record a couple of lines because we wanted to go a different direction with them after we had put them in the game and listened to them and everything, and we had some extra time, and it was like, what are we going to do with this extra time? And we didn't know, and then we were like, we did want to make an Easter egg. What if you just reread one of the audio diaries, but instead of words, you said meow? And she was like, okay.
If you say so.
So we went back in.
Game
and
as
she was
hell.
a champ.
Yeah.
And did it perfectly. And
did not break face.
No, and Josh, our audio engineer, I think, just had no idea what the hell was going on.
He was kind of off. It was good shit.
And yeah, at the end of the audio diary, when you make the basket in Sam's room, you can hear from outside the booth us starting to laugh before the audio cuts off.
It's a beauty.
Yeah, no, Easter eggs are fun, and again, congratulations for looking up.
Meow meow. Meow meow. Meow. Meow 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 meow. Meow meow. Meow. Meow meow. Meow. Meow 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 meow. Meow meow. Meow meow meow. Meow. Meow 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 meow. Meow meow meow. Meow meow. Meow meow meow. Meow 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 meow. Meow 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 meow. Meow, 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 meow.
one of my favorite things that came out during development was someone wrote an email mistakenly referring to mittens, and Steve replied in the voice of Katie, saying, "It's just Mitten. She's only one cat, Mom."
Composing the ambient exploration tracks definitely ended up being the weirdest part of creating music for Gone Home. The audio diaries tended to take precedence since they had such clear criteria for completion, so the ambient tracks were the last things I did. I spent so long immersed in the logs, which were very specifically timed, that to suddenly shift gears to creating these slow, standalone 5-minute pieces was surprisingly difficult. I remember giving Steve a first stab at the ambient track for part 2 of the game, and I didn't hear anything back about it. When I eventually asked if he had any feedback, he said something like, "Oh yeah, it's great. I just slowed it down by 50% and it totally works," which cracked me up because I definitely didn't have that in mind. But that's one of the great things about collaborative work, so I just went with it. I ended up doing a number of further revisions where I'd alter elements of the original version specifically to affect how the 50% slowed version would sound. It was definitely a new experience for me, writing bits of music and trying to imagine how they would sound after it's been considerably distorted. It got weirder though. The ambient track for part 1 ended up being a backwards version of the slowed down part 2 track. And again, there were elements that sounded good at 50% slow forwards, but not at 50% slow backwards. So again, I went back to the original track and started altering elements so they would sound better at half speed in reverse. I don't know if that's a thing ambient composers end up getting used to, but for me it definitely felt like going down the rabbit hole.
They tell you to stick with the group on field trips, Katie. There's a reason for that. Lonnie and I snuck off on the side paths at Multnomah Falls and got a little lost. Okay, a lot lost. Like, for hours. Right before the bus left, we found a trail and came running down the path, soaked and covered in mud, shouting for the bus not to leave. The school called home. Mom and Dad said, "You didn't get into trouble like this before you met that Lonnie girl." But I don't think they know about us. The kids at school, though, I'm really afraid that's a whole other story. Stick with the group, Katie. Stick with the group.
There was a little bit of concern on my part before any of this got started that you never know how much liberty you're going to be given and how much over-direction you're going to get, because somebody hears it like a specific way, and if you deviate from that at all, you're just going to keep doing the line over and over and over again, like 50 times until it's right. So I really wasn't sure what to expect, but even on the first day getting in there and being able to go through a few of the lines and just give them what came to mind, and seeing how closely I think everyone was on the page about it. So the direction was always really positive, and it was always kind of coming from either additional information that changed the context of what I was reading, or a certain change in the phrasing or the way something is being, a pause here or maybe move it to here, or instead of emphasizing this word, try this one instead. So you end up with a lot of different takes that really give it a very different feeling, depending on which one you go for.
Putback is the feature that I'm happiest with in the game, and it actually came about as sort of a little bit of an accident. Playtesters had told us they didn't want to feel like some kind of horrible person rummaging around this house and tossing everything on the floor, but there wasn't really any other option initially. That's all you could do was sort of try and lob things back into the place. So, I had done some code before for placing turrets and things in other games where it, will arbitrarily orient an object to be perpendicular to surface and all that sort of stuff. I told Steve that, we'd have a lot of edge cases with that and it would take some time to implement, and temporarily I would just give him the ability to put objects that these things would kind of stick to in the game, and we tried that, and it worked so well that we decided to keep that, and that's where Putback came from.
Todd's band lost their singer. Todd said he sucked. Lonnie said he got sick of Todd's shit. and he was complaining about needing a new singer. So Lonnie was like, I can sing. And they were all kind of like, you can? And she was like, probably. But she's been rehearsing with them for like a week now. And I finally got to see them play in Todd's basement today. And she's actually really amazing. I feel so proud when she's on stage. It's incredible being in awe of someone you love. So everybody knows it's like a temporary situation till she ships out in June. But till then, I'm gonna be at every single show.
You know, there was kind of this intellectual, cross-cultural, like pen pal thing that happened before the internet. You know, we used to write letters back and forth to each other about our ideas and about how we wanted to change things. And so a bunch of these women that I mentioned came up with this idea of Riot Girl, of being a punk rocker that was also an in-your-face feminist.
So there's this little scrap of paper that's hidden under this bedside table, and you start to read it, and then Katie makes you stop reading it. And it was this thing where it's an exception to the interactive expectations that you have. Like, it's one place, I guess the one place where we really impinge on your ability as a player to do what you want. And Katie intervenes, basically, and it was something that I thought was an interesting little one-off way of emphasizing the difference between the player and the character that they're playing as. And to you as a player, the note's just a note, but a reminder that, like, Sam is Katie's sister, and Katie wouldn't want to read this thing, and she's not going to keep doing it, even if you want her to.
Oh man, this thing.
So two things. One, Mom's Canadian.
Yay!
Two, Mom didn't start out Canadian. The reason that Mom is Canadian is because Kate Craig and Emily Carroll are Canadian, and early on in the development of the game, Emily did Mom's handwriting.
This is before she did any of the UI text or anything.
Right, and it was before we decided that all the moms were going to actually be written by moms and all that kind of stuff.
Integrity in moms.
And so we had the answering machine note in the foyer, and there the line. What's the actual line that's there? It's like
neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. So the line on the thing is like Daniel from the old neighborhood call him back. And we gave the text to Emily, and she wrote it out longhand and gave it back to us. And then I looked at it, and I realized that she had inserted a U into the word neighborhood.
Because it's what you do.
Because of being Canadian. And so, to fix that bug, instead of removing the U, I said, bug fixed, Mom is now Canadian.
I'm so stupid sometimes. I was telling Lonnie that I got into my college summer program thing, and I was all making plans like, you should come visit me, stay in my dorm room. But she said, Sam, I ship out on June 6th. I was like, ship out? To where? She said, to basic training. What did you think I was doing all that ROTC stuff for? I guess she's been planning to join the army right after high school since she was like 12. And I guess she's really going to do it. So I was like, after graduation, I'm just never going to see you again? She said, let's just have fun while we can.
One of the larger assets that we needed for the basement to really give it character and personality was a furnace. And when we were initially thinking of the furnace, Steve had mentioned to me the furnace from Home Alone, which if you grew up in the 90s like I did, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I did a lot of research and looked up stuff that could kind of evoke a similar feeling, and we finally settled upon octopus furnaces, which are like, they're thematically and time-wise very appropriate. They're these giant hulking monstrosities with all these arms covered in asbestos. Really perfect, so we ended up modeling one of those and put it in the corner, and I think it turned out okay.